Oh no, you're already recording.
area. And and then I probably did not successfully take that and bridge it into the freedom of being able to work when you want, where you want. I don't think I did that very well, and so
Gotcha.
I lost people. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and as you start to go through it, sorry, I forgot my camera wasn't on. As you start to go through it, you'll find those ties, right? Where you get them interested, in what you're talking about. And you might have to bridge it with some questions of, you know, what would it be for you if you could work anywhere? How important is that to you, right? Or how important is it to you to not go to a 9 to 5? And so we're going to talk about that as we get going. And you'll find that as we start talking about their story, not our story, you'll find those ties as we go through. Al, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I just did a live today. I changed my time to 9 o'clock this morning because of what I'm going through. And yeah, it took about 20, 25 minutes before I kind of got pushed out.
Hmm.
And I'm still in that same box with these people. I can't get them to engage. I'm trying. I gotta find that magic potion to get the engagement. I get people in that are engaging, but they're just people from both communities. Going in to get their heartbeats, and I talk about that, and along with whatever I'm talking about. Very rarely do I get somebody in that's not part of the communities to engage right now.
So when you say they're not engaging, what does that look like or feel like?
I'm getting a little frustrated with it, but
Okay.
because I mean, I'm throwing the questions out there. Throw the one on, throw the two on. Throw travel. Um,
Okay.
I'm talking. Like today, I was talking about when I was out in Alaska halibut fishing. Anybody ever been out there? What do I got for fishermen out here? And yesterday I went up real quick on a pop up, which I didn't get a lot of people. I didn't think I was going to, but I was talking about football games. And again, no, nothing other than a few people from my community that I already knew where they're at, but it was nice of them to engage, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Right.
Yeah.
So,
I've just got to figure that out. That's all.
so sometimes you have to say so I'm just going to say it this way. Sometimes you have to say the audacious thing to get people to respond. Meaning you got to hit them with that, and we're going to talk about that today. Sometimes what happens is you have to say the one thing, I'll label it this way. Say the one thing that everybody's thinking but nobody's willing to say.
Mm.
And so this comes down to what happens when we're telling our story and where does our story intersect their story. And we can provide the value, but then you've got to tie the value to what we're trying to offer. But in the middle is where you have them. And they're the ones standing between you and getting them to start. And they're looking around going, okay, where do I fit here? And then it's a matter of um, how do I fit, right? Does somebody really see me? And we're going to talk about that. Um, and there's a fine line and there's a fine draw. And so when we talk about, and I'm going to use both aspects of it. It doesn't matter if we're talking about legacy. It doesn't matter if we're talking about MWR. Remember, people don't buy, they never buy based on the logic. And so what people feel is what they're buying from. And so we can talk all the logic in the world, like you're living paycheck to paycheck. You're going to a job that's sucking the soul right out of you. You want to have more time with your children. You are a single mama trying to raise your children and trying to figure out how to make this financial thing work in the midst of whatever, right? And so you kind of have to say the emotional audacious thing to kind of basically what you're doing is you're hitting them in the chest. And you're saying, and it's kind of like walking onto them and pointing them right in the chest and going, I know this is you, right?
Can
But
you give an example, Lisa, of something you might say?
yeah. So this morning we were talking about, um, I was sharing my story this morning, and let me look at my board. I basically said, I got them to talk about what it is that they are. Like when you're going through your day, what do you say you are? And we were using the I am statement. And somebody said, I'm broke. And somebody else said, I'm enough. And I said, do you see the two perspectives? So I said, when you say, so I kind of walked up and pointed at both of them and said, do you see what we're talking about here? One says they're broke, and you keep reiterating that, and you're going to continue to be broke. But the other one who says, I'm enough, they're probably more likely to move. And so we kind of, sorry, I just got to check on something. Somebody was out throwing garbage cans in the yard, not in my yard, somebody else's yard. So it was, we were having that statement, and then somebody in the live said, "Oh my gosh, I never considered it like that." So basically, what I did was I took, I gave them the value because the whole value was about where's your mindset, right? And then once I got them there, then I can say, you know what? Here's my solution. My solution is this business where I make money online. You thought that you were stuck. If you're thinking that you're broke, you haven't failed. You didn't fail at all. But now you got to realize that you're enough. So now I'm talking to both of them. I've tied both of them in and I said, look, I have a solution for you. So this is about getting them to realize their problem. Their problem is they don't have enough money. Their problem is I want all these things. I see all these people experiencing financial freedom, but I don't know how to get there, right? And so now essentially what I'm doing is I'm taking their plight, I'm taking their problem, and I'm saying, look, I have a solution. I'm only mentioned travel a very tiny bit. I don't even really talk about it. So when Al was talking about, we were talking about the travel. The point of what we're doing is not about the travel, it's about the business. The business is what creates the freedom. The business is what's going to get Big Andy, and Andy's on the call. The business is what's going to get Big Andy out of that freaking semi so that he doesn't have to be putting his life in danger, having to deal with all of these truck drivers who can't read a freaking road sign. Are you all following me?
Yeah,
Does that make sense? So
yeah.
what happens is in the nervousness of what goes on in a live, this is kind of the ability to think on your feet a little bit. It's getting to know who's in your audience and getting, hey, tell me about you. Where are you from? And I know that they're not responding, Al. That's sometimes a hard question, right? So then you have to create that. Who's your football pick, right? And so you're putting all those questions out there, but then you might have to back it up as, I don't like football. I think football sucks. Do something audacious. Get them to respond. What do you mean football doesn't? What do you mean football sucks? Right? But you do it in jest. Don't do it in seriousness because then they'll think they're going to be offended, right? But if you do it in jest, you do those little things, then you get them to talk. Once you get them to talk, then you find out more about them, right? So when we were talking last week about this is about nurturing who is in your life. This is about thinking about it like if you were going to go sit and read books to a bunch of little kids. That's exactly what we're doing. But we're taking them on a journey and we're taking them on our journey and then we're giving them a solution. But the nervousness that happens when you are live forces us to rely on the product, and the product does sell itself. But if you can't tie where they're at to the product, there's going to be a disconnect and they're not going to be with you.
Yeah, you definitely got to get them there. that's my problem. I mean, like even yesterday, I said something about the Steelers, and
Mhm.
you're hoping to get some kind of response. And I live in New England, but I'm not a Patriots fan. I'm not a Jets fan. I'm not a, and I'm still. It's just getting frustrating because I'm trying to figure out what audience I am actually capturing in here. You
Who's
know,
So let me ask, so let me go back. Who's your We're going to talk about this today as we get going. So I wanted to ask these questions because I wanted to see where you're all at. So I knew how to tailor as we go, as we start talking about this. So I want you to all think back, and I don't want you don't necessarily have to answer, but I want you to all think back about when you started this journey into digital marketing, into the people that you're talking to. I want you to think about who you identify with. I want you to think about who your perfect customer is, because that's one of the things that it doesn't matter what digital marketing program that you're in, we always talk about the perfect customer. And some people will go so far as to say the perfect customer is me. That's not necessarily totally true. The perfect customer relates to me, but it might not be based on my specific situation. Does that make sense? I am not a stay-at-home. I am a stay-at-home dog mom, all right? But I identify with stay-at-home mamas because I still have things going on. I'm still cooking, I'm still cleaning, I'm still doing all those things. It might be because I'm the wife of a truck driver. So there's going to be this wide range, but when you first started digital marketing, you were focused on what's the plight of your perfect customer. And then you kind of have to look at it a roundabout way, and we'll talk about that as we go today. Other
yeah,
things.
because of my course, that's kind of where I went. Was my perfect customer is me, somebody that's either retired or looking to retire,
Hmm.
and it's a vehicle to help me off into retirement because I got some 401.
Hmm.
I've got some retirement, but how much is enough? And this is going to help give me bridge that gap. And maybe that's not my perfect customer, but that's really where I've been trying to tailor it to,
Hmm.
and it's not there. Um,
Well, and I think the key emphasis here is we all feel, and we've been taught that we have to tailor it. And it's not about tailoring, it's about being. And we'll talk about that today. That's a great segue. Great segue. Any other thoughts, comments? Okay, Christelle is in. Thoughts, comments? I did get a chance to get to Christelle's live this morning. Um, and I did see some remarkable differences in her lives today. I saw more people responding, which I thought was great. And Al, you even had more people responding this morning than you thought. You didn't know I was watching from the outside, because I was scrolling through and I was walking around the house. But you had more people responding. There seemed to be more conversation. So, all right. So when you guys were looking at your time studies from the weekend, what did you guys find about your own times? Was it a shock?
I'm multitasking. Can you ask that question again?
So the question was, when you were doing your time study over the weekend, what of your creating content, going live, how much time were you spending? Was that a shock to you, or was that pretty in line?
I was kind of off my norm this weekend, so
Hmm.
I don't think I'm in a great place to comment on that. That's going
Okay.
to happen this week.
Okay. That's fine. It's a work in progress.
Hmm. Hi there. How are you, Lisa?
Hi, Christelle.
So what I do is I actually spend quite a lot of time on post engagement, but not as much as engaging on other people's content. Basically just engaging on the content on um, just engaging on the comments on my content.
Mhm.
I very seldom go into other people's content, but I've really made a note of going into lives, really go and supporting lives. That's what I've started doing as of this weekend.
Awesome. Awesome. Did you
Mm.
feel like now that you are paying attention to it, that the barometer or the temperature of the amount of time that you spent was coming down?
Yes, yes,
Awesome.
yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Achieve goal. We've achieved goal because we can get sucked into this really quickly, right? When
Yes.
you're stressed, when you're holding on to it, when you have goals and things don't feel like they're going the way that we want them to, then we start amping up the amount of time we're in social media, and it actually is having the opposite effect of what happens in our live events, which is our know, like, and trust factor. So then we notice that we're spending more time in social media, and I want that to come down for everybody because it messes with your energy, whether you understand it or not. And it messes with your content.
Yeah, it's true. Mindset, 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 mindset. There's literally nothing as important as mindset.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. So in the workbook for this week, I gave you some spots. So this is a work in progress. This was not a one and done thing. So when everything starts to feel out of control with your live events, when they start to feel out of control with your content, when you start to feel like you're being sucked into something that doesn't feel the most positive, come back to this chart that I listed here for your time study results. I've listed you some recommended times of where it should be, right? You don't have to spend tons of time. The important part is that you're living life, that you're not spending all your time doing your business. And so I didn't write this for people who have their own communities like Christelle and myself. That's separate, right? That's a different aspect of business. But in this case, I did list these because there's this place in where we're doing things. So if you go live for an hour, that's pretty typical, right? But as we're creating content and we start using automation, you can go down a ChatGPT rabbit hole and get stuck in there. You can spend all sorts of time scrolling for hooks and ideas. And then you're soon in a rabbit hole, and then you're overwhelmed. You're frustrated because your hooks don't sound like everybody else's hook. Your hook is you. So when you can remember that aspect of it, your hook is everything about you, you know, and then you can take less time for that. And we'll talk about that. I want to so I left this chart here. Plug in your time, start comparing it. This is not You're not going to accomplish this all in 1 week. I just want you to know that. So this may take some time. Sometimes we have to break old habits, and it takes a few days to do that. Let's talk about what impacts your time, what impacts your life, and why is it important. So what we see is in the overall realm of our business, there are behavioral tendencies that we tend to get into, whether we understand them or not. They're all subconscious. They're all subconscious. They're all coming from a place, and I'll discuss that in a minute. But we have these tendencies right here. So the first one that we see is this huge one down here called overwhelmed. So we get stuck in this place in being in a live where we feel overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed about what questions to ask. I'm overwhelmed of how to get them to engage. I'm overwhelmed by this. And sometimes a joint live helps it. Sometimes it might not help it. So we'll talk about how do you get out of that overwhelmed stage. The next one is, I have to look at my chart, is the avoider. Okay. I've coached other people on lives before when I say, remember we were talking last week and I said the most important thing was consistency. And so as you're starting to move into this consistent realm, the most important thing is the consistency of the time in which you go live. Because once they start following you, they will come with you. They will be there. But it's that establishment of consistency. You got to give it a couple of weeks. So, Al, I know you changed your time up a little bit. And as you start to get this solidified time, people will know where to look for you. You might have to advertise when you go live well, you need to do it daily, but you might have to put a post up that says, hey, I'm going live at 9 a.m. Eastern time every single day, or whatever time that is, right? Puts it in front of their face. But if you remind them every week, oh, yeah, I've heard him before. I think I need to follow him, right? I caught he's got that cute little thing that hangs out in his live, right? And that catches everybody's attention. Well, I like that little thing. So now I want to follow him, right? So it's those things, but make sure that you're doing that. Now, this avoider thing, that's where I say, look, I've coached other people and I've said consistency, consistency, consistency. And there's an avoidance that happens. Like the last time they went live, they had a troll, right? Those happen. You just got to let them go. And that troll, we've seen it happen. We've seen it happen with Victoria. There was one day, as long as Victoria's been doing this, it was probably about 4 months ago. And Victoria had somebody who got into her live and said one thing. And that one thing hit that emotional nerve for Victoria to the point that I saw her call a lid on that live. And then I saw her put another piece of content up that said, I apologize for what happened, but that really hit me hard. So we got one choice at that point. Did I feel good did I feel good or bad during my last live? And that's where the avoider will come up. The next one is our perfectionism. So perfectionism comes from a place of fear. For fear that I'll be seen, for fear that I won't have it all together, for fear that somebody will see my chinks in my armor, they'll see my flaws, they'll see me. And this is also the same place that perfectionism also comes from the similar place of what we call the imposter syndrome. Are y'all with me? All right. So let me know if you're with me. Okay? But that perfectionism also can cover over what we're talking about imposter syndrome. And I'm bringing this up for a really important thing because I see this happen when people start going live. Okay? The next thing is I get to the place where I delegate. And I delegate a lot of things. I might be delegating. I had somebody come to me about 2 weeks ago who said, I need your help with going live. And I said, okay. I said, when have you gone live? And well, I went live last week. And I said, which day last week? Every day? Nope, just one day. It was like Monday. This is like 2 weeks later. And I said, well, first of all, you have consistency. And then it became, well, I need somebody to help me. Help you do what? You have to be consistent here. And then the other aspect of it is then there was some delegation of blame. I'm just going to say it that way. Delegation of blame. When I started, I didn't get any support. I hear that a lot. We have to remember that it's not about that. So we can fall into that trap. I'm just saying, none of you are, but I want you to know that it's there because I see it in a lot of other creators. So I wanted to make mention of it. The next thing is, let's see, let me go here. Crisis maker. And we'll talk about these. So let's get back down to here. So we have the overwhelmed, and I've given you solutions here. Okay. So the overwhelmed is to start small, break your work into smaller steps. Okay. Avoiders come from a place of decision fatigue. I have to make the decision what I'm cooking for dinner tonight. I have to make a decision on how I'm going to deal with my child's school, how I'm going to deal with the repair person who comes to my house. We're constantly making decisions. You have to make decisions about your finances. You have to make decisions about what day are you paying the stupid electrical bill, right? When you're doing all of that, when we get to that place where I've had enough of decisions today, I need to avoid it. The solution is really for us to avoid it. The solution is to determine the emotion that lies behind the task that you're avoiding. And I'm sharing these because not only do we experience these, but the people in your life are also experiencing these. These are the same problems that cause people not to buy. Okay, questions, because I'm getting some confused looks. I want to make sure. Thoughts, comments? Okay. Next, embrace your imperfection. Set realistic goals. Focus on the small steps that take you to accomplishing that goal. Set time limits for each task. Okay. So that's why I was talking about where were you with your time studies? You're going to find this as you go. These are the things that crop up, especially when you're trying to create content, you want to go live, you're trying to do this. Sorry, the mailman came. All right. So so where were we? We were talking about, set time limits for each task because when we're in the perfectionism mode, it's not ever gonna look perfect. So I can find myself personally in a rabbit hole, dealing with my fear, but my perfectionism will flare when I'm dealing with fear. Okay. Crisis making solutions. Eliminate the stress of the last minute. There are some people who tell me that they work well under pressure. I can tell you a lot of that too, and it never works well for me. So I'm doing things at the last minute. I'm reminding myself that, you know what? I work well under pressure. It'll be better when I get there, right? And at the very last minute, I'm trying to get in, I'm trying to do the content, I'm trying to put the live together, and then we have that. So there's some solutions here for you. There's some solutions there for you. The delegate solution. This comes from if I want it done properly, then I'll do it myself. Or I didn't get enough support. So now I want to delegate the responsibility back to the person who was supposedly supposed to be supporting me. It can morph into the opposite spectrum. So then we start pushing tasks or responsibilities to others. So this is a responsibility thing. And I only bring this up because they crop up when we don't think that they're going to crop up. The dreamer solution. We turn our dreams into concrete goals and spend time on them regularly. So I saw a post in one of my communities this morning, and the person wrote, and I'm sure that there was more to the conversation. So I'm just saying the statement hit me. I want financial freedom for my family. What is that? What is financial freedom? See, this is where in our live people understand financial freedom, but they don't really understand financial freedom. So if I were to go to if I were to go to a person in my live and I say, what does financial freedom for you mean? Meaning, I just want to pay one credit card off. That might be financial freedom. I want to not have to go to a job that's sucking the life out of me. That's financial freedom. And this is in your live. These are the pictures that you have to paint for people. These are where you've got to ask them the questions. What does financial freedom look for you? See, when I asked them the question this morning in my live about what is your I am statement? I am tired. I'm bored. I'm broke. I'm enough. I'm healthy. I'm whatever, right? I got them to respond. You might have to go at it from that perspective just to get them to engage. And then last but not least, you have people who go into that place of the rebel solution. So they said create 3 to 5 videos, right? They said go live for an hour. So where does that fit for you? Where does that fit for your followers? Where does that fit for the people in your life? There's always going to be a rebel. Always. So how do you talk them off the ledge? Okay. So when you're working on your time study, I want you to go back and look at these things and see, and I gave you a new chart, and see when you're going through your time, what is it? What role or tendency are you in when you're in that time slot? Okay. Now, we're going to fix it. We're going to fix it really quick. So this is going to take a little bit of work. You got a little bit of homework to do. Your social media and your social media content and your live are based on one thing and one thing alone, and that's your story. It's the hardest thing. You can spew all the facts about your product and it won't mean anything. It has to come with your story. People don't buy. So I'm going to use the digital granny as an example. Okay. And I love her. I love her live. I love her content. And you know what? It's probably one of outside of outside of Chris, all of you have great stories, but I love the way that she does it. And so if you haven't caught her, catch her on a live sometime. She usually goes in the evenings in the United States time, Christelle. Um, so when you hear her story, she always starts it off with, um, she always starts it off with, I lost my vehicle and my job on the same day. And you're thinking, what in the heck? Right? And she talks about how she had a stroke. She had a stroke, and the husband didn't show up. And her kids took her to the hospital because he was cheating on her and he was with the other woman when she had the stroke. So he was nowhere to be found. Now that's pretty brutal. But then she gets out, she can't really do much other than do DoorDash, right? Now she's a single mama raising 5 kids, and the husband's a schmuck. And I'm not, this can happen for men too, so don't get me wrong. But you know what? He's nowhere to be found. He is out of the picture. She's trying to raise 2 kids. She has no money coming in. She gets a job with DoorDash. And because she can take her youngest that she's homeschooling with her on DoorDash. And in the same day, the big black beautiful Suburban that she really loved blew a tranny. And now she has no vehicle and no job. Well, then what? She's thinking her back is to the wall and the cliff. And the emotion in which she tells it is what gets people to stay with her. Then, if you get into her live and she knows you're in the community, she knows you from the community, she will take a break and she will have a small conversation with those people. Because here's what happens. People love to be peeping Toms. People love to spy on other people. That's what social media is all about. So the other day, and I didn't intend to do this, I just got into the live. I was engaging like normal. And she's like, Dr. Livingston, did you go out on your date? I mean, I had talked about that date like 3 days before that. Yeah, I did. And we were talking about this, that, and the other thing. And I said, I had this thing and that for dinner, and we were laughing, and it took like 2 minutes laughing and joking about my dinner experience. And then she went back to the business. And everybody was like hanging, like, what are these two talking about? And then she jumps back into the business. She had 4 sales that night while I was sitting on that live. Okay. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to engage them. Hey, and she said, this is Dr. Livingston. She's from my community. And I just need to ask her this one quick question and then I'll get back with you. And they were all like, what in the hell happened? Right. So as we're talking about our story, your story first has to be personal. It has to be the authentic part. So where the tendency happens in a live to lead with the product, that's not the point that people are there for. They're there to hear, I want to know more about, you know what, Al, you were talking about the thing that you're going through. Well, you prefaced it that, and I'm thinking, I want to know more about what you're going through. Now I know you've told me, right? But even here, you had this wonderful thing happen that God put you in this place to have this other thing happen so that you can pursue the thing about your digital marketing business, right? Or your travel business. So those are the things you talk about. Like, I started this, I didn't know this is what I anticipated happen, and my world kind of got turned upside down. I learned a bunch of things and I was overwhelmed. For the love of Pete, right? This digital marketing thing was harder than I thought it was. Right? And I was spending more time, but I was trying to make it work. And I was trying to hold down this job over here and this job over here, and then do this thing too. And then all of a sudden, God did this wonderful thing. Right? Am I hitting it right, Al? Yeah. That's the stuff people want to hear. They don't care about the travel business. They could give a rat's ass, excuse my language, they could give a rat's ass about how many trips they can take. They want to know, how am I going to make money? How am I going to make money? And here's what I would say. I never have had anybody ask me about the travel aspect. They've always asked me about making money. Why? Because that's what I'm focusing on. That's where they're finding their freedom. The travel is just a small perk of the whole business. The second thing, their story, it's connection. It's their story, not yours. Their story is connection, empathy, and relatable. I have said this before, and I've heard Christelle's story, and I love Christelle's story. If I would have met Christelle before I met the person that I purchased from, my legacy stuff, I would have bought from Christelle. Not because I was a single mama, not because I was divorced, but because there's something about her story that I relate to. I ended up purchasing from, most people will know, and I don't make any bones about it. I love the man. I purchased from Tim Hess. Why? Because he said one word on the live to me. Had nothing to do with the fact that he was laid off. It had to do with one word that he said. And this was my point of relatability. This is my point of empathy. He said, I was pissed off. And I share that on my live quite frequently, so I don't spend a lot of time here. And then our stories, our shared mission, our community, and our bigger impact. So where does my life intersect with yours? Where does your story intersect with theirs? So your story should always be from that place of your scars, not your wounds. And here's where I find many new digital marketers get hung up. Okay. They hear in their communities, and remember, we're talking about beginner friendly. There's got to be a phase 2, right? And the communities, doesn't matter if it's DWA, SWC, I don't care, all of them. There are elements that take you to a phase 2, but as a new beginner, where people get caught is understanding what their story is, and we're going to talk about that, and what is it about my story that I can bring to the table for their story? Because we're here for their story. We're not really here for ours. We just have to be authentic in ours. So we have to remember that people buy from the emotion and the transformation. And the only way for us to convey that is through your story. The only way for you to convey that is through your story. So here's where the homework lies. And we're going to talk about this. This is going to be a little bit of a shorter call because this is going to take you a little bit, but we're going to walk through these questions. Sometimes we have to go through a reset because we've repeated our story over and over and over again. And there's always an aspect that's a little bit deeper for us. That thing that says, I've repeated the fact that I've been laid off how many times? And it becomes old, right? Like I have no emotion behind it. Now I've got to take it to the next level. How do I keep that emotion alive in me to say, it really pisses me off, right? It still pisses me off, but I think they're going through another layoff. So now I sit back and I go, oh, I'm a lucky girl. Now, of all the people that they're laying off that came out of that organization, would I hire any of them? Would I recommend any of them for digital marketing? I don't know. But I hope that those same people would have the same fire, right? I hope that they're feeling the pinch because some of those people, if they've been laid off, they doled out some pretty bad shit. I'm just going to say it. So we're going to talk about how do you create your story? How do you revive that emotion? So remember to clarify what your values are. First and foremost, we're going to go through some questions, okay? And I want you to take some time over the next night. Write these out. Write them out. Keep them in a notebook. Keep them in a notebook. Sorry, I forget I have blurred back there. So you don't see all the dog crap behind me. Keep it in a notebook so that you have it handy. Some of you might shed some tears over this. I did when I did it. So I want you to look first and foremost, because some of us have been doing this for a while. What are your core non-negotiable beliefs? What do you believe about yourself? What do you believe about others? Oh, there went the chicken. Jet, it wasn't even Jet. I'm just saying. What do you believe about yourself? What do you believe about others? And what do you believe about the broader world? Then I want you to understand what makes you sad. What disappoints you? What saddens you, right? Know what those are, because these are the things that your followers are feeling. What makes you happy? What gives you joy? What gives you hope? What gives you peace? And what makes you mad? What frustrates you? What angers you? These are all points of content too, by the way. I'm just saying, but these are the things that you've got to convey in your life. Then I want you to look at your strengths. This is where we most often don't look at this. So when I say create value, this is where sometimes people get confused. So I want you to go back and what comes easy to you that's hard for most people? Is it creating recipes out of the just by making it up as you go? Is it trying to budget, right? When you were living dirt poor, right? And you had no other way to look. What is it? What is it that comes easy for you that's hard for most other people? What problems can you solve immediately, obviously, and consistency for someone else? And remember, when you're talking on a live, you're talking to one person, just like you are in content. You're going to get all the other people who go, oh, I kind of relate to that too, right? But remember, you're only talking to one person. So I have certain followers who I know are on the verge, right? They've been following me. They've been in that rule of 7 that we talked about last week. So every morning when I get up and I'm getting ready for my live, I know those people will get in there, and that's the person I'm talking to. I've had one follower, seriously, who has been with me for a year, and she has made at least 2 attempts to get into Legacy, can't get through the payment plan. And so now I know she's probably coming in the other because it's lower cost. I know she's working 60 hours a week, so everything I say is directed right at her. But everybody else follows suit, and you all don't know that I do that. I know who she is, and I know her by name. I've talked to her on the phone, and she has been with me forever. And I know, but how am I going to close her? I don't know. I've got to help her. I've got to motivate her enough to solve her own financial issue, whether she's selling stuff out of her house, which I hate to recommend, but you'll find a way. If I keep giving that stuff, okay? And then look at what is unique about me. Take some serious time, meditate on this, spend time. What are your quirks? What are your experiences? What are your expertise? And don't be afraid to share that with people. I want to know what makes you tick. Your people want to know what makes you tick. Number 3, what is no one else saying in this space? What are the words that you dare to say that nobody else is saying? What are the things that the single mamas need to know that nobody else is saying? And is it that moment of you got to kick them in the ass? Or is it that moment where you say, I see you? And remember, what you're conveying in content, you need to convey in lives. It's the same thing. It's not just about a business. It's about the emotion of it. Next, number 4, what do you want to be known for? Be very specific about what you want to be known for. You all are survivors. Every one of us are survivors. The only difference between you and me and the people who follow us, the people who get into our lives, is that we took one step forward. So go back and remember, what was it that caused you to take the step forward? In spite of the judgment, in spite of your family telling you that you were full of crap, in spite of all odds being against you, what do you want to be known for? Only you can determine that. And then look at, what do you not want to be known for? What feelings, values, and beliefs and ideas do I want others to associate with me? See, I don't want to be known as just the fun, sarcastic Lisa. I want to be known as the person who's going to get down on the floor with you and hold you and cry with you. That's really what I want. And what do I want out of my online presence? What do I want out of my brand? Okay. So the question that I'm going to have you ask, and then you got an extra page here for you. Final consideration for the next session. Who are you talking to? Who specifically are you talking to? You've got, each one of you have one of those. or you're getting one of those. So who are you talking to really? Dig deeper, be specific with them. What is it that single moms are now dealing with that they weren't dealing with when you started your business? You might have to do some research, and we're going to talk about their story next session, which is Wednesday. Questions, thoughts, comments, feedback.
This is all incredible. Honestly, it has got me thinking deeper because I know I need to think deeper as far as what all of these questions that you've thrown at us. But you've stated them in such a incredible way that I think I can actually address them. And I've worked with a lot of people that, I've tried to have them help me coach through different things in areas. But you're right. I mean, and that's kind of where we are. All of us are survivors in something in our life. And I love the way you stated that. What's the reason that made you step forward, even when everybody thinks you're freaking crazy and everybody thinks, oh God, there she goes again. There's something that makes you keep on going. And so I think that's where we all need to look a little deeper. And that's so good that you pointed that out. That's really helpful.
We're kind of, and I've seen this trend happen. So, and Christelle's probably been in, oh gosh, longer than me, right? But I've seen this trend happen over the last year where we kind of went from, hey, yay, rah, let's have a business, to now let's get down and get dirty, roll up our shirt sleeves, and let's just cry our way through this thing and get really brutally honest about where we're at. Now we're seeing the authenticity come out. And they've been talking about it, but the emotion behind it is so much more intense right now, that I'm starting to see some things where it's not just about a business anymore. It's about a real human transformation. That's what people are needing. Even
Exactly.
one of my favorite creators who is sarcastic as all get out, and I've told you about her before, is she goes by the name of Sarasota. And some of you heard me talk about her. She's sarcastically funny. And her live is all about being probably inappropriate, for lack of a better way of saying it. But it's funny, right? Sometimes we need that. And she does these prank calls. Totally not appropriate, but she gets crowds in there. She's got 1 million some followers, right?
Oh,
But
fun.
I heard a piece of her content the other day. And while she does this in her live, her content is still about the being authentic, the being real, the being who you are truly meant to be. And when we feel like we have not accomplished that, like I'm still fighting to figure out who I am, that shows up in places we don't anticipate it. So this is why I'm asking you to do this heavy work. This is heavy work. This is not easy work. But when you understand where you're at, then it helps it bring it, because then you're going to get the people who go, oh man, she really gets me. She totally gets me. He totally gets me. I can't pretend to say that I always speak in the way that some men understand, right? Although I can be the Tom girl when I want to be. But I also know, being married, there's certain ways I can phrase things to my spouse that I can't, you know what I'm saying? So but you have to know this about yourself to bring that. That's what people are hearing. So men tend to go to their head, and I'm asking you to go here. Because what would it mean if you could get out of that job? What would it mean if you didn't have to drive a semi in a dangerous condition? I look at that every day. Those are the conversations we have in our household. What does it mean if you don't have to go work in the oil fields? I had a guy who came in who literally is working in the oil fields, and he works 20 hours a day. And he's like, I just want a break. Yeah. So, thoughts? Other comments? I'm not going to keep you guys terribly long today because we were really long the other day. And this is going to take some work. Next week or next session, we're going to talk about what your perfect customer story is. So that's why I'm asking you, consider who you are talking to. Consider who you're talking to. And you might have called it a perfect customer, but there's more than just that in your perfect customer. I saw somebody in a live say, I heard your story on such and such a thing, and that was really inspirational. Dig deeper, find out what inspired that person. Oh, sorry. I got FedEx coming. So they're going to bark again. So comments, thoughts? Is this helping?
I think it's helping immensely with me. So
Awesome.
maybe I'm being too critical on my lives right now.
Are you overly critical of yourself?
Not yet. Well, yeah. And I don't trust anybody to get anything done because I've been burned way too many times over the years.
Oh, wait a minute. So now we're back up to here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so now we are in. Let me go back.
I don't micromanage, but I also don't relinquish control very much because people that I thought that had my back and I thought knew exactly what I wanted, I don't all of a sudden don't turn out that way quite a bit.
So now we're in
So yeah,
Yep.
and I see what you're saying about my situation. Yeah, I think I got to start making a series out of it or something.
Maybe. 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 Think about the conversations that you have with the one person that you trust the most. Those are the things that you can share in your life. Those are your thoughts, your feelings, the things that you share with your spouse or your best friend or your children, right? Those, your parents. Those are the really important questions, right? And then there's an aspect of things, right? We're not just a husband, we're not just a wife, we're not just a mom, we're not just a child. We're all encompassing. So while today I can talk about being the wife of a truck driver in my story, tomorrow it might be, I was a caretaker for my mom before she died. It was the most excruciating point of my life. And I was trying to hold down a job, a full-time job, take care of my mom and go to college. And the emotions around that. And then when she finally did, we moved her out of my house, I didn't know what to do with myself. I had an utter breakdown in my family room where she used to have her chair. Every night I would come home from work and I'd curl up in a ball on the couch next to where her chair sat because I didn't know what to do with my time. And when I started sharing that with people, I had everybody who was on the outside looking into my life, who had been caretakers from their parents, they all of a sudden flooded into my life. Oh my God, you went through that too? See, it's the little things in our story that we discount because we think they're minor when they're really not. Oh my God, you went through that too? Oh my God, I didn't sleep. Or I was half panicked, or she would have had a mini stroke while I was at work and I didn't know. And then she would be furious when I got home and accuse me of trying to poison her. She didn't even know. Right? And so when you're talking with, and I say that because I have a person in our community who we had this connection, and she's helping her sister. Her sister's taking care of her mom who has dementia. And to watch your parent go through that, and then to just stand there and take what they're shelling out, and to pretend like it didn't hurt when it's weird how it happens, but to take all that and to pretend like it didn't happen, right? The things that they say, you're just like, oh. Those are the pieces of the stories that people want to hear. And so when you understand your story
to
enough,
get that prescription for Gracie.
yeah. So when you understand your story enough that you can feel free to share
Thank you
that.
so much. Okay.
Oh,
Perfect.
wait.
Thanks. See you later. Bye-bye.
So when you understand your story enough that you can feel to share that, you will be amazed at who comes in and identifies. Go ahead, Crystal.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but
Oh, no, you're fine.
it's so moving. How do you get to that level? How do you get to that level where you can talk about that? I think I have been doing this so long that I have kind of cut off the emotional side, and I think that is what is lacking with me at this stage, where um, I I have gradually become surface level. I've
Hmm.
gradually become surface level, and I need to get back to the emotional side of me. But it's so hard when you've kind of like, as a protection, um, kept everyone away from you by
Hmm.
just putting up walls. Oh,
Hmm.
gracious.
That's the hardest part. And the longer I've noticed this, especially with it was funny. I love her dearly, but I noticed this even from Michelle's live the other day. I happened to get into her live, and I thought she has done it so many times, and she's portrayed everything about her business, and she's so busy and she still has a great following. Don't get me wrong. And there's people that she's connecting with. But there's a place where we can get to that place of protection. And then it felt like the energy, I watched her live and it felt like the energy fell off. So the irony is, I had to go through this is why I went through these questions with you all. This is your soul searching. This is
Okay.
that be brutally honest with yourself. This is that place I had to go and I had to say, who am I? And why am I afraid to share? Why do I want to keep things at surface level? And then I had to make a delineation of who do I really want in my inner circle versus who do I want out there, right? And I've been burned. We've all been burned by somebody, right? We trusted somebody with something and we got hurt. What was it in that hurt me, right? Now I have the control to do that and I choose to let in who I need to let in. But when you flip your story to the place of who am I serving, it makes it completely different. That's that's going to be the next question that we get, right? The next thing that we cover is I've kept everything at surface. Let's be brutally honest about what your story is. What was the part that made you break? There have been breaks in my life, right? I don't make any bones about those. I don't have to I can do that from my scar place, not from my wounded place. But then when I use that story to go to the person, who am I serving? And that's where it doesn't become surface anymore. Am I really serving them? Am I going to be the one to say, "Hey, I'm just wanting to make money off of you," or you know what? I'm going to help you make money and I'm going to teach you how to do it and I'm going to sit down on the floor and I'm going to hold you and I'm going to cry with you. I'm going to hold your hand. Does that make sense? And this is
Yep.
this is the hard work. And I hate to say it this way, but I can look at I've done some audits of people's lives and I go into the live events and I'm like, you got to tell your story. You got to tell their story. They're with you, right? They'll stay with you for the funny parts, but that's only going to be short-lived, right? They'll stay with you for the fun parts. They'll stay with you for the energy, but you've got to get to the place where you tell your story. And is it your story for everybody? No. But you know what? I have people literally that I have had for a year. There are some of them who are on disability. They cannot. They can't do this business because they'll lose their disability if they do it. As much as I've tried to convince them, you know what? Why wouldn't you make more money than you're making on disability? But the mentality in the United States is way different.
Mhm.
So but they stay because they relate. So I have some that are just never going to buy. I know that. And I still treasure them. I still serve them as much as I possibly can. And what they'll do is they'll buy the low end things for me. They'll buy my coffee brand. They'll buy my weekly recap because they like that, right? That's fine. And I have these low ticket items just for them. That's why I created it. I'm serving them in that way. And then I have my other higher ticket items for the people who need them more, right? Um, and for people who are, let's go to the next level. So, but this is the hard work. This is the hard work. These are the things I've cried over. And in a year of creating content, in a year of being in this business and feeling like I was sheltering myself, the minute I started opening my heart is the minute everybody flooded in. And they'll be with you.
Lisa, I've been doing this for 22 months. In my first year, I have had huge success. I made $200,000 of it. Lost my big TikTok account and lost myself in the process. And I think that is where my walls came up. And I've been trying now for the last year to get back to where I've been. And I mean, I'm not going to name names, but I have tried and reached out to so many people for advice and guidance and support. And please help me. And I'm struggling with my story. And you know what? You have literally just told me what I'm doing wrong. I have just had probably the biggest breakthrough of this year. Thank you.
You're very welcome, my friend. That's what we're here for. It's not about the money. It's about who we serve. And and I learned this from my spouse. So I'm going to say this. There were times when my spouse had to have a neck surgery and I had been laid off from Verizon at the time and we were this close to losing our house. This was back in 2008. And we were down to literally, I had vacated all of my severance, vacated my savings. We were having a hard time putting food on the table, just trying to hang on to our house. And we were at a convenience store one day and we had some cash and we were down to just cashing in the last of the CDs that we had before my spouse got called back to work, which was a blessing. And we were at a convenience store and we had about, I don't know, maybe $100 left. And my spouse saw a homeless person and said, I'm going to go give $40. It takes a work of faith, right? And we have to remember that when I give, then it always comes back tenfold. And that was the miracle that we needed, that we gave to this homeless person who happened to be a veteran who had a pet. And you know what? I remember thinking, if this is what it's going to take for us to go through this, this is what I needed, right? So when I approached my business, I sucked, right? My content sucked. The only thing I did well was the lives. And I could keep people here by telling stories. I could keep them here by telling my story. And then I had to make that transition of getting them empowered enough that they would buy. And so when I flipped this is my active service, everything came full circle. And it worked out the way it was supposed to. So I'm glad that helped. But when we get away from I got to make sales to who am I serving, it completely changes everything. And that's how we look at it. So awesome. I'm getting notices. What other questions, comments, thoughts? I wish you well as you go through this very important work. This is an important work. And as you write this, and I know I didn't mean to make everybody cry here, but as you walk through this, even for the men on the call, this is going to be a hard thing. Don't be afraid to go through the hard place. This will be good. So, all right. I will get this recording up for you all. You guys have the workbook. It's already in the community. So the next session is Wednesday the 10th at 9 a.m. Central Time. So we're a little bit earlier. But we will be talking about their story because we create from our story. We create for their story. And then we'll talk about the last part. So
Lisa, sorry, I've got one more question. How many pieces of content do you create today? Because you create an hour before you go live, then you create about 15 minutes before you go live, then you do live, and then you also do the content after that. How many pieces of content do you do a day?
I do of actual content, I do 3. And then I rely on TikTok to give me some of the other videos that I push into my stories because generally it's because I got a response, right? So I might have been telling a story, I might have been talking about the business, whatever the response was that TikTok gave me, I just shoved that to my stories. Now, my coach, Justin, will tell you not to do that, but it has worked for me. So I've kept people there. And TikTok likes it when you share that. They wouldn't give it to you otherwise. So I create 3 pieces of content, sometimes 4. If they're short, I have a drafts folder. My warm-up videos, I create the day before. So they're real quick. And they take me about roughly 2 minutes to do because I've just done like 7 seconds of music. And then I put the topic on. It takes me like 2 minutes to create that. And then it's there, right? But I'm not spending more than 40 minutes to 50 minutes a day creating content max.
Okay.
I have, but and here's what I'll tell you too, this new business that we started, I've found that I don't have to put out as much content because I'm so busy going live and helping other people go live. So it's kind of taken me, but I've had just as much engagement. So it's going to ebb and flow. So, but yeah, I use the tools that I have and um, use them to the best of my ability to put it out there, and people follow it. So,
Would you get out of there?
I-
Because I do the exact same thing as you do with that. And yeah, I when I get the ideas, like I have some downtime now at the new job, in between when we kind of shut down over there, and or just during the day, I'll get some ideas and I do them up real quick, leave them in the drafts. And exactly, like when I used to pop in and out of yours, that's what I was doing. Is I was posting and I was coming back to you. Then I was posting and I was coming back to you.
And sometimes it's just the ebb and flow of my day. Now, like I had a video that I did. I filmed it in the truck yesterday on the way to the grocery store, honestly. I just put some text on it this morning. It was sitting in my draft. I put some text on it and I put it out there because I knew today I was going to have this meeting and then I was going to have to feed the dogs. I had a sick dog, so now I had to wash the bedding. So it's been a kind of a weirdness of a day. But now as soon as I finish this, I'll create my last 2 pieces of content. I'll post them later while I'm sitting around after dinner. That's it. I don't but here's the thing. I fell into the rabbit hole of going down the chat GPT thing. I don't automate any of my stuff because I want the control. I want if I'm having one of those days where it's one of those I'm really energetic days, I want to portray that. But if I'm having one of those days where um I talked about this in June. I had a day where it was just a funk. I was in a funk all day. And I put up a piece of content and said, I didn't know what was going on, but I need to be really honest with you. I couldn't figure out why I was in such a funk. And then I realized that it was the day that my mother passed away in 2019. And it didn't even dawn on me what the date was. That's how, and I said, this is how out of tune I am sometimes with the date because I'm in digital marketing. I'm home all day. I'm doing all the things. And I didn't even realize what the date was. I knew what day it was, but then it hit me. And I was like, energetically, this is where I was at. So I know there are people who repurpose and do all those things. I just don't because I want that control. I want that authenticity for me. I don't want to feel like I'm repeating the same thing over and over again. And I want it to be a part of where my heart is, which is why I share that. So I've tried to make my content more authentic like that and on the fly. Sometimes on the fly is good. So I hope that helped. Yeah, I just use what is available and I push that out the door. Although I did have somebody tell me last week that I had to turn you off because this is somebody who wanted some coaching from me for free. And I was like, that's fine. I don't mind sharing free things. I really don't. But the amount of time was becoming extreme with this person, like days and days and days. So, um, you're going to have that. And she said, I had to turn you off because you were putting out so much content. I was just putting out my live content. So it's where she's at. She's new into legacy, so she's still learning. And I give her grace. So awesome. Well, I'm glad that this helped. I'm glad that this is the breakthrough that you guys needed. I'm hoping that that you find your story, right? Just write these things down. We'll craft your story, but I want you to get in touch with those things. What were those things? What are your non-negotiables, right? You got to draw a line in the sand too. What are your non-negotiables? What do you believe about yourself? What do you believe about others? What do you believe about the world? What is it that got you to section yourself off from the rest of the world, and why? You guys will find it. When you find that, then we're on the right path. And then we'll create for their story. So, all right, I'm going to stop sharing this. All right, any other questions? Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Any other questions? Comments? All right, I will get this recording up. It's not as long as last week, so it shouldn't take as long to get up, and I will hopefully get that up yet today, and maybe later this afternoon, but I will get it up on the site for you guys. And then I'll look forward to seeing you guys Wednesday. All right, you guys have a great day.
You too.